there are kind of these unwritten rules that oh, this is what lawyers do and this is how we do it and blah blah blah. And I think that just kind of throwing all that stuff out and trying to figure out what is it that I want to do every day? What do I not want to do every day? And then building your firm and like consciously designing it in such a way that it allows you to do the things you want to do and not do the things you don't want to do, that's the key to like happiness.
Sharp strategies, sweet success.
Welcome everyone to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. This is your host, Tiffany Swedensky, and this is our first podcast of 2025. And I'm really excited to kick off the year with one of my favorite clients, Jason Epstein. And Jason and I are going to talk about legal marketing, legal intakes. Jason has a law firm in Bellevue, Washington that also works out of Seattle and just basically most of the cities in the local area. And he's been doing this for a long time. And prior to me working with him as a fractional CMO, he was a part of the Great Legal Marketing and still is a part of the Great Legal Marketing Mastermind. So I got to know him there first. And Jason's a really cool and interesting guy. He loves Star Trek and science fiction. And I just like talking to him. He's a really nice dude. What do you say to that, Jason?
I mean, that's like, it feels really nice and like something my mom might say, except for the Star Trek stuff. Like, I don't think anybody's normally that nice to me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you got a few people on staff who are classically kind of mean to you.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a dynamic that I invite. But honestly, like I don't think that anybody thinks I'm cool, especially my children. So cool, it's just funny to have that word used to describe me.
Yeah, I don't think children ever think their parents are cool until kids are adults themselves, and then you can really appreciate how cool your parents actually were.
I hope so. I hope we're starting to come around. They're 16 and 20, so I'm hoping the 20-year-old is starting to figure out that maybe I'm okay.
Yeah. What are oh, well, I didn't plan to ask this, but what are have your kids talked to you about what they're going to do when they grow up?
Yeah. So the 20-year-old is a lot like me, where um he at this point in his life he just doesn't really want to work that hard in school, and it's like he's kind of trying to put in as minimal effort as he can to like get to do just what he needs to do to move to the next thing. Um, he's trying to get into computer science. He goes to University of Washington. He wants to be a computer science major, but that's one of the most competitive majors that they have at the University of Washington. So I don't know if, to be honest, I don't know if that's going to happen. Sorry, Quinn, if you're listening. Um, I'm sure he's going to kind of figure it out just like I did, because spoiler alert, the law was not a plan for me.
All right.
Um, yeah, yeah, just over the course of high school and college, and it was always just kind of like, hey, what can I do to not like flip burgers? And it all just kind of resulted in law school being the path of least resistance at the time, and that's what I did.
I don't know how many people would say the law school is the path of least resistance, but it seemed to work out for you.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, my undergraduate degree was in philosophy, with an emphasis in logic, and so that was just kind of the way my brain worked, and so that's why I did that. It was just kind of the easiest undergraduate degree, and then I got that degree and entered the job market, and I was like, okay, I don't want any of these jobs, and I don't want to go be like a philosophy professor, get more education that way. My dad was a surgeon, so if I could go do it all over again, I would go to med school and take over my dad's practice. Um, but by the time I had my degree, that wasn't going to happen, and so I was like, well, I'll probably get into law school, and so I did, and here I am.
I think what is it? Inorganic chemistry is like the class where if you can't pass that, you're not getting into medical school. And that was what stopped my husband from getting into medical school. He hated organic chemistry. Kind of
Yeah.
cracks me up. He would have been a terrible doctor, so it's all for the best.
I mean, I've met him, and I can say he wouldn't have the best bedside manner, but you know, I could have done it. I mean, you know, they're just people.
Yeah. So one thing, the question that I had in mind that I wanted to ask you about, because this is really unique about what you guys do at Premier Law Group. I don't see many other firms doing this, but anytime somebody calls the practice, they talk to an attorney. Whether they have a good case, a PI case, not a PI case. Like I've listened to phone calls where you're talking with people about, you know, legal issues that fall wholly outside of Premier Law Group. Could you talk a little bit about like one, like, well, I guess to start with, like, how did you guys get there? Like, how did you decide this is what we're gonna do?
Well, you know, like most people, when I started this firm with my partner Patrick, you know, we were small, right? It was just like us and, you know, like somebody answering the phone. And so, you know, when you're doing that, you're doing everything, right? And so, you know, 23 years ago, 22 years ago, when Premier Law Group kind of became what it is now, I mean, that's just what we did. Like, you know, we took all the calls ourselves, and you know, went through all the intakes ourselves and stuff because you know, out of necessity. As we grew, um, I think that there's a couple of reasons that it stayed the same, and you know, through the iterations has remained that they're going to talk to either me or one of my other attorneys when they call. Um, it started mostly because I didn't trust anybody else to make the decisions that I was making on cases. And you know, there's a lot of times in PI cases where, you know, yeah, sure, it's like you can get like a slam dunk call where there's no question, right? But there's a lot of gray area where it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if we can get this, then we can help, or like, okay, well, it's not that big of a case, but you know, liability's good, or you know, so there's just like a lot of kind of gray areas. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of nuance in like especially we have some interesting rules about workers' comp claims, and when you can bring a third party claim with respect to them, and when you can't bring a third party claim. And so um, instead of trying to come up with an algorithm that would explain every facet of the decision tree, it it makes more sense to me for me to just take those calls and just deal with them like right now in the moment and figure it out if we want to take them. So that was number one. And when I tried to offload that at different points in our process to other people, they would come to me with all the questions anyways about like, well, hey, but this and this and this. And so it's like, might as well just talk to the person at that point. Number two is I think that you know, being in Ben's orbit and in GLM for so long, and kind of, you know, doing all these things, like there's certain kind of key things that we keep coming back to and that are always part of, you know, whatever the new thing that we're talking about is. So like, for example, right now, you know, the last few years EOS has been like, you know, the craze, like everybody's running EOS now. And even going through traction, you know, you're coming up with like, well, okay, well, these are my core differences. This is, you know, this is what makes me different than everybody else. And so one of the things that makes Premier Law Group different than everybody else is like anybody who calls with any issue, even if it's an issue we don't remotely handle, is going to talk to a lawyer right now. And most of the law firms that do personal injury, you don't even get to talk to a lawyer in the sign up phase anyways. You know, it's outsourced and it goes to someone else. And so I feel like that's a big differentiator for us, is that you're getting that attention from, you know, theoretically the highest level in the office right away. And the reason that I decided that we would just talk to everybody, even cases we know we're not going to handle, is because I know enough about enough stuff to probably put whoever's calling with whatever situation they're calling with in a better place than they are before they called. Whether it's like, hey, you need to call this person, or, you know, oftentimes what it is they've got so much stuff going on and they don't really even know what to look for. And so I can just help them kind of hone down, okay, here's the type of lawyer to Google for. This is what you're actually looking for, and just like help them identify what their real issue is. And so I figured, you know, as long if we can provide that service to the people that are calling up is us of putting them in a better spot than they started in, then that's just value that we're putting back into the community and building goodwill and then hopefully when they do need us for something, they will have had a good experience and we'll get them on the rebound.
And it definitely is like what's unique about Premier Law Group. And it's powerful that we get to put that message out there that, like, hey, if you're going to call other law firms, you're probably not going to talk to an attorney. Because that's true. Unless they have like a super good slam dunk case. Uh, what happened to you?
My lights go my lights are on a timer and they go off if I don't move. So that when I'm sitting talking, they think I'm not there.
That's so Seattle of you, so energy conscious. Yeah. Yeah. That's another thing I appreciate about you, because anytime like I might throw a bottle in the not recycling, you will call me out and make me put it in the recycling. You've done that a few times to me.
Pretty low hurdle there, Tiff. Yeah, just choose the right receptacle to throw your recyclables in. Yeah.
Look, we don't, it's not thought of very, very much out of Washington. And listen, like, we can talk about this, but like, most of the recycling goes in the trash anyway.
Yeah, it's true. My wife and I talk about this a lot, like, because we watch documentaries and stuff, and basically, like, most of the recycling industry currently is getting us ready for when they can recycle more stuff. And so, yeah, most of it does go into the landfill. But I don't know. I mean, it just makes me feel slightly better about what
I
I'm
do wish there was like, particularly with technology, I wish there was more like right to repair, instead of like just trading up a phone or trading up a watch, that it lasted a little bit longer. That's stuff that's kind of I think about. I bought a new fitness watch recently and I felt kind of guilty because the one I bought 6 years ago is obsolete. But it still exists. It's still hard minerals, cobalt, whatever it's called, and all that good stuff. Um,
What did you buy? The world wants to know what the tech stack guru bought for her fitness watch.
I've been pretty dedicated to Samsung products for a while, mostly because they very rarely give me problems, except for that Samsung flip phone, which I broke immediately. Twice. I broke immediately twice. I broke it, fixed it, broke it again. So it's a Samsung. It's their newest like Galaxy watch or whatever it is. I like it. It's all right. Yeah. Um, okay, so bringing it back to marketing because I get off topic. Uh, So you're doing a lot of the intakes yourself. You're doing a lot of these phone calls. Like I imagine other attorneys like wonder like how much time does that take up in your personal schedule and the schedule of other attorneys? Do you feel like you're talking on the phone all day, or is that just part of your job now? Like how do you manage that?
I mean, for sure, it's part of my job. But no, I mean, so and just to be clear, like the intake process as a whole can be like a really long process of gathering all the information and stuff. So I don't do that. So I'm, basically a call comes in, they talk to uh, my, I guess she's called our intake person, but she's doing is just getting name, address, email, phone number, and like, what's your case about? Then I was like, 10,000 foot view, and then it goes straight to me or one of the other attorneys. And so what I'm doing at that point is figuring out like, okay, what are you calling about, and is it something we can help with? And if it's not something we can help with, then getting them pointed in the right direction. For the most part, those calls last somewhere between 5 and 25 minutes. They're not crazy long. Even on cases where we're going to take it, where we signed it up, I'm still done in 20 25 minutes because I figure out like, okay, we want it. I make sure the person's got all their questions answered. I make sure they're comfortable with us, and then I get them the fee agreement via electronic signature. And then when the fee agreement comes back, my legal assistants will then perform the rest of the intake as far as getting claim numbers, getting police report numbers, and getting So they spend more time doing that like data gathering part of that is normally considered intake that I don't do. So I still do pass a lot of that off, but it's after I've already made the decision, do we want them and do they want us?
And I mean, it helps kind of speed things along because I see with a lot of other firms, you get an intake, the intake is performed, all that data is gathered, and the attorney still has to review it. And, a lot of times they have questions that would be more easily answered if they're doing the whole thing on the phone themselves. So it makes sense. It makes sense why y'all do that.
Plus, I don't think anybody can sell the firm and our services and the need to hire us better than I can. So like I want to do that. I want to be the closer and make sure that we get the cases we want. Problem of course is scaling that, and could we get to a point where we have so much intake volume, so much call volume that I couldn't do it? Sure. And that's why the other attorneys also take calls. But could we get to a point where there's so much volume that it doesn't make sense to do that? And yeah, but that's not, number one, it's not where we are. Number two, it's not really where we want to be. We don't want to be like a high volume mill sort of practice. We want to make sure that everybody's getting the highest level of service that we can deliver, and that we're maximizing value on all the cases. And so it works better for us. The other thing is that I think that the kiss of death that I hear from, so I'll get calls a lot from people that are pissed with whatever other legal experiences they've had. And people hate it when somebody says they're going to help them and then they withdraw. And so I would way rather front load the time and make sure we're not signing up cases that we don't actually want, or not signing up cases that we do want. I think my time is better spent serving that function than it is cleaning up the messes on the back end.
And some firms are like that, sign first, ask questions later kind of thing. And I mean, it does depend on what type of practice you want to run, because it'll work for some people. Some people like doing that. But it's not really for everyone. Everyone gets to choose. I was recently on a LinkedIn boot camp, basically like how to do LinkedIn for attorneys. And one of the things that the boot camp leader was trying to basically tell people is like, you need to have thought leadership. You need to go on LinkedIn and you need to state an opinion, and don't worry about if some people are going to disagree with it. That's just what happens when you have a strong opinion. One thing I like about you, working with you on LinkedIn in particular, is that you have strong opinions and you're really not scared of sharing that. What would you tell an attorney who's like, oh, I want to get on LinkedIn, but like, I don't want to offend anyone, I don't want to call anyone out. Like, what would you tell them to maybe help with that?
Well, I think that if you're not taking, well, first of all, I think being authentic is just like the most important. And so it's not an act for me that like I say crazy shit, because I say crazy shit like all the time. And so doing that in a public forum on a soapbox like LinkedIn, it's like I would do that if I was in a room with 100 people too, just kind of say what I'm actually thinking. So it's my personality to start with. That's number one. Number two is, this goes back to stuff that, again, we've been talking about and learning about, since I joined up with Ben, which was 2009. So it's been a long time, about magnetic marketing. And, part of that is understanding that I'm not the right flavor of ice cream for everybody out there. And that's fine, because there's other ice creams out there. And so I really want to find my tribe and the people that are magnetically attracted to what we're offering. And part of that means putting yourself out there in a way where you're not for everybody, So Ben and I talked about it in one of his podcasts once, that 4 years ago during the Trump presidency, round one, that I would frequently talk about my disdain for the president in client meetings. And it's kind of like it's like a litmus test, because I know that later on in my representation of somebody, I'm going to, express my woke liberal viewpoint in some way. And so if that's going to bother them or offend them, I'd rather we know it now, as opposed to, waiting until later. Or another example is, I wear T-shirt. This is my uniform for the last 15 years. I don't dress up. I haven't put a suit on except for my parents' funeral in 10 years, and so and firm pictures. So like
Yeah.
if a client comes in to meet with us and they're expecting somebody to be in a suit and they get me in a T-shirt and jeans, if they've got a problem with that, I'd rather know that now, because I'm never gonna be Mr. Formal, three-piece suit with that sort of demeanor. It's just not who I am. And so why pretend and play? Let's just I'll be me. And if you like me, which a couple people do, like I think there's like 3 people that like me, and it's my kids and you, I think. I think my wife used to like me. I'm not sure if she does anymore.
Oh.
And so, like, I might as well just be me and let the people that like me, be like my kind of loyal fans, and not try to be everything to everybody.
And I think that's there's a lot of really important lessons in there. But like looking at like the website, which Hennessy just recently like relaunched for us, you're in a suit there, because professionalism on a website, like I'm new and I'm still like learning is important, because like people who are outside of legal will visit a website and make a snap judgment. So what they see there, but that's a website. Like when they meet somebody, when they talk to somebody, it's just a whole different ball game. Because like when you're face to face with the person, you want to feel that authenticity. Otherwise, you're just going to feel like the other person's fake. And it's the worst thing in the world to present to somebody like you are fake, like you're like a fake person who's not listening and engaging with them or whatever. Um, so yeah, we do have photos of you in the suit and they're plastered on the website, but like when you meet with people and talk with people, I don't think I've ever seen you in person in a suit. Um,
Yeah, I don't think you have either. And I think that as far as like my thought process about representing that way on the website and some other more publicly facing things that we may do, is that people are hiring us to solve a problem for them, and so we have to show that there's like the minimum competency to solve their problem, right? And ultimately, even though nobody wants to go to court and nobody wants that to their process to go that way, we got to show that like, hey, look, we actually can do that, and we do that when we need to, and we like I can show up in front of a judge and a jury and look appropriate and not look like I'm wearing a grunge Halloween costume from 1994. So like it's important just that they know like, okay, these people are legit. But yeah, to try to pretend like every day of my life I'm wearing that lawyer costume and that's my persona. It's just not, it's not true. And so if I did do that, if I did pretend that, and if I did put a suit on when I was meeting with clients and stuff, it would come off as inauthentic.
I mean, it definitely would, because I think people can just smell bullshit sometimes. And if it's not a part of your personality, if you look stiff in a suit, I can think of a handful of guys who don't wear suits, and when they get in suits, they just look uncomfortable. And so you can kind of pick that up, I think, as a human being.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I look amazing. I happen to look amazing, but
oh, yeah.
yeah, I don't love
What flavor of ice cream are you, since you mentioned that?
it. Ooh, that's a good question. I'm definitely not chocolate or vanilla, because that's like, mainstream, that like, large swaths like. I think I'd be something maybe like mint chocolate chip. Like
You would, do you want
like
me
a
to tell you what I
little,
thought?
sure, yeah.
Pistachio.
Well, we both went green,
Yeah.
so there could be something there. Speaking of which, my youngest son is red green colorblind. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, and so we talk about it a lot, because people will be like, oh, well, what color do you see this as? And he's like, bro, I can't see, like, it's asking, like what red smells like. Like I don't know. I can't, but he, for a really long time, I just discovered it like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. He thought peanut butter was green, because like that color is not, he can't register that kind of brownie, it's like part of his color blindness. And so I was like, hey, you want some peanut butter? He's like, no, it looks gross. I'm like, what do you mean it looks gross? He's like, I just don't like to eat green things. I'm like, peanut butter's not green, friend. And so,
That's
anyway,
funny.
sorry.
What color does he think matcha is?
He just doesn't, he doesn't have anything there. It's like anything in that kind of, that spectrum, green, red, and all the stuff in between it, it all just blends. It's all just shades of, it's like different shades of whatever gray he sees. So you can differentiate, like if you held up, like, he could tell like those are different shades, but he couldn't tell one is green and one is red.
It's such a weird thing to wrap your head around. There's a musician, and I'll be impressed if you know who she is, but Charlie XCX. Yeah, you know who she, okay. She claims that she can like see the colors of music. Like she associates a song with a color, which I just think's wild.
Yeah, it's called synesthesia. It's where you have sensory experiences through a different channel than they're intended.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It's just hard to like process and wrap your head around. This is something I want to know. It's mostly from our curiosity. Of all the marketing campaigns, marketing ideas that you've ever tried or implemented, what was your favorite? And it's okay if it's not mine. I'm not trying to trap you. I am curious what your favorite idea was.
That's a tough question. I mean, I like things that are against the grain and like, nobody else is doing this. I've recently seen like some of the bigger billboard players are starting to do some things where it's like kind of like that. Like there was that one on LinkedIn where somebody in Philadelphia, a law firm, their billboard was about how the Cowboys suck. It had nothing to do with like the law firm or like getting clients. It was just, and so I thought that's interesting, and I like that. And I've even seen Morgan and Morgan is doing some of those too, where it's like, it's kind of outside the box in that way. I really like that one a few years ago that I saw where it was a Super Bowl ad that somebody ran in their local market where they like somebody dropped a wallet and then got in an ambulance, and they were chasing the ambulance but the premise is they were trying to give the wallet back, but then everybody else saw this lawyer chasing an ambulance, and they're like, oh, there's Joe chasing ambulances again. So I think those kind of things that are funny and catchy are great. I don't know that I've really had any great ones like that because I don't do things that are kind of mass media like that would really kind of grab the attention. I think that my favorite stuff that I've done for my marketing is stuff that puts me in front of groups of people. I think that's what I would say I like doing. So I enjoyed for a while, I enjoyed doing the Teens Against Distracted Driving, where I was speaking to high schoolers and middle schoolers and holding assemblies in the schools and stuff. That was fun because getting up in front of a couple hundred teenagers is fun and it'll keep you on your toes.
I bet.
I like doing we did those community barbecues, and that's fun. It's fun to just kind of be feeding a couple hundred people and just be fielding whatever random legal questions they have all the time while I'm standing there. That kind of stuff is fun because it's like actually helping and answering questions and giving them access to some legal knowledge that they wouldn't otherwise have and would have no way of getting answers to. And people will ask some really weird, interesting stuff, and so it's kind of interesting to think about how to work through whatever their issues are.
And community marketing is like the type of marketing that it begets more marketing. Because you do the community marketing, you get face to face with people, you get to talk with them about their legal issues, and you get photos that you can talk about on social media. You can cut videos if you took videos there. Yeah, community marketing, it just like spawns all these assets that marketers can use and implement in their marketing. I did it again. I love it. I love community marketing more and more each year because it gets referrals, and then also people on social media see it, and whether or not they called us because of the ad, they're saying, "Oh, I love the ad," or "I love what you guys did," and that's worth a lot too, even if it's hard to measure.
Yeah, no, I think all those contacts are I've kind of evolved over the time period that I've been doing this, that I used to want to compete in certain ways, and now those ways are have just become cost prohibitive to compete with. I mean, even Seattle was a very resistant market to a lot of big TV spend. Like there were a couple people that were doing it, but it wasn't a really big spent market. There's not a lot of lawyer billboards. Seattle's kind of an interesting little corner of the country where we aren't kind of operating the way most PI markets in the country are operating. And what we've seen in the last, like COVID, post-COVID, COVID and post-COVID, is all these other people from other states have decided like, hey, nobody's spending a shitload of money on TV in Seattle, so I'm going to do it, even though I'm not there. And so we've got, we've had this kind of spate of poachers come up and try to infiltrate our market. And, I'm sure they're doing fine and they're spending a lot of money and, I guess it works for them. But it just got to a point where I realized, okay, there's certain things I'm just not going to be able to compete on because I don't have that budget. But what I can do, the things that they can't do, which is go to an apartment complex and meet 200 people and answer the phone and give them real answers about how they should deal with a Seattle specific or a Bellevue specific issue that they're having, because I've been through that intersection and I know whatever. And so just being a real person that's really here is kind of where I've shifted. And I don't even know if I showed you. Did you see our the final design of our swag that I did?
I remember looking at some swag recently, but maybe not. Yeah, bring it up.
And so this is from the PNW for the PNW Pacific Northwest. That image that you see there was our stadium that was built in the late 70s, and then they demolished in 2000, called the Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
And so there's like this generational shift, even in my office, that the people who are under 30 are like, I have no idea what that is. And then the people that are over 30 are like, oh, it's the Kingdom. And so the point is like, hey, I'm from here. I know what the Kingdom is. Like I grew up with the Kingdom. If you're not from here, then you shouldn't be practicing here. And then on the back it's accident injury lawyers, premierlawgroup.com. But so the point is that I went and bought a bunch of PNW related URLs that I'm trying to figure out if maybe one of them is better than what we're using. Well, let me ask you this question before I answer your question. Who would you say your target audience is?
For this podcast, other people like you, other attorneys and attorney marketers, like their marketing directors.
I would say that something that I see a lot of resistance in the legal community in general, and then people who are your target audience in particular, is that there are kind of these unwritten rules that like oh, this is what lawyers do and this is how we do it, and blah blah blah, and I think that just kind of throwing all that stuff out and trying to figure out what is it that I want to do every day, what do I not want to do every day, and then building your firm and like consciously designing it in such a way that it allows you to do the things you want to do and not do the things you don't want to do, that's the key to like happiness, at least happiness with what you're doing. And so the good example of that is that in a few years ago, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, maybe a little longer than that actually, I went to, that's when I thought I wanted to be like I personally, Jason, want to be a really good trial lawyer. I want to try cases. And I went to the Jerry Spence Trial Lawyer College and, did everything I could to like, did all the reading and did everything I could to like, I'm going to be the best trial lawyer ever. And then I tried a bunch of cases and turns out I'm just not really good at it. And so realizing like, hey, I can still be a good lawyer and do good work and help people, but take that component out of it that is supposed to be like a defining component of my career, and just say like, I'm going to let somebody else who's good at that do that thing so I can do the stuff I'm good at. Giving myself the permission and the freedom to do that and not get tied up in like that's my identity, is being the best trial lawyer. I think that's a really important place to get to. Figure out who you want to be when you grow up, and then make that happen.
And that's an important lesson for marketers, even if you're working for somebody else and you don't always get the opportunity to say like, this is what I want to work on. But I get marketers all the time. It's like, what's the right way to do it? And that's hard to answer that because it's like, oh, there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's why I think, yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't skin cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why are you skinning cats first?
Well, I just say that to put the fear of God in my cat over here. But there's more than one way to get things done. There's no right way. You can get there, even like the most mundane stuff has its own, there's no right way to do anything, right? And so I think that's like for the marketers, that's really important to keep in mind. And also, like, even if you are the only marketer at a law firm, like, you don't have to do anything. You can work with vendors, you can ask the other staff for help, hire a freelancer, and you don't have to do it all yourself. Nobody is judging your strength as a marketer based on how many varied things that you can do successfully. Most people are good at like a handful of things. And then the rest, like, they need help with, and that's just perfectly fine.
Yeah, I agree. That's well said, Tiff. I mean, I think what you're best at is rocking beanies on Zoom calls. I think that's your core competency, and you should stick to that.
I know you like the beanie look. I can't say I wore it because of you today. I wore it because I didn't want to wash my hair. And
Me too. Me too.
yeah.
I did not want to wash my hair today.
Yeah, what do you use? Do you use soap or shampoo?
Shampoo.
You use
I use
shampoo?
I use a 2-in-1 though. So I'm doing the shampoo and the conditioning all at the same time. I'm just getting it done.
That is such a guy thing. I
I know.
wouldn't dream of it. I wouldn't dream of that.
Yeah. But as you can imagine, like my hair being like soft is not really important. So in fact, it's really long right now. I have to cut it tomorrow. So
Yeah.
we're
You're
getting
you're
really,
looking very hippie-ish,
I know. I feel like I could almost braid it. It's like very long.
Oh. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to Jason. Lots of good stuff on this podcast. And if you want to learn more about him, visit premierlawgroup.com and you'll see his picture right there on the homepage if you want to get a look at him in a suit. And if you have a legal issue in Washington, just go ahead and call him because you will most likely end up talking with Jason.
And if there's any problems on the website, call Tiff and let her know.
Yeah. Just, be nice about it. All right. Thanks, guys.